Now I should actually put a warning on this video that the shots aren't going to be that good. You know, possibly the most difficult thing of all in keeping up an interest like landscape photography is that motivation. How do you stay interested when you just can't be bothered? Now you may think when you see people out vlogging, having a great time, that it's always like that. You may feel that sometimes you're not as enthusiastic as the people on screen. Well, that's not actually the case. Very often I have real difficulty getting myself out of bed and going to locations, or even bothering getting the camera out. It's been like that lately with me. I've just not been bothered getting out. Many a time I've got the camera ready the night before, and yeah, when the alarm's gone off, I'm not bothered getting up. And I love getting up in the mornings because I just don't feel motivated. And this is something I've always had with every interest from time to time. But there are a few ways you can work through it or snap out of it, and I'll just share some of them with you today. Well, the first thing to do is to not worry about it too much, because if you force yourself to get out and photograph just for the sake of photographing, it can be detrimental. Having said that, I sometimes need a kick up the backside, and today is a case in point. I really didn't want to come out. It's raining, it's dull. But one thing got me going, and that's the thought that I'll try something a bit different. I haven't shot colour film for ages, so I thought perhaps today was the day to try shooting a bit of colour roll film in my local forest. As I hope you can see, today is a wonderful day for shooting colour, because there's nothing but colour here. It would work in black and white, but I think better in colour. And by using colour film in my Bronica, I'm actually quite excited to get the camera out and start shooting. And the other thing I'd actually recommend is to not go to a spectacular location again, and that can help definitely, but it can also be a lot of effort and time and money getting there. So I prefer the approach of going somewhere very local and sticking within a small area. I'm going to work within 50 yards of this spot I'm starting in today, and I don't intend to get anything spectacular. You see, having a rather reduced expectation means already that I'm not going to be disappointed. That's not going to knock my confidence anymore if I don't get anything good today. I've got simple scenery around me, but that combination of using a different film, maybe use a different camera in a different way or a new lens, coupled with a familiar scene where I know I'm not going to be walking far, I'm going to be here for a couple of hours at most, means I can get my head around it and I'm not going to be too overly obsessed with getting the perfect shot. So I need to make my film choice. I have some colour filmage with me in various different types. I've got a bit of gold 200, consumer, Portra 160, lovely, and a bit of Ektachrome 100 slide film. Now, I'm looking at the scene behind me thinking it's not that high a contrast, and I was actually going to put the Portra 160 in, but I've just looked again. I'm actually going to go for the Ektachrome. I know Ektachrome's not known for its super duper greens, but it's a fairly low contrast scene today due to the rain and the cloud, and I think it might suit slide. Now, another thing I thought I'd try today, which I don't do very often, is to use my light meter in incident mode, which means popping up the little white cone and changing the setting to take a reading of the light falling on the scene. Okay, and I'm going for F11, that gives me 1 second. So rather than do the spot metering all the time, I'm just trying something different. Let's see what the results come out like. Now, because I've never actually shot with Ektachrome before, it's a first for me, I'm going to bracket it because I'm probably going to take about 4 shots today, absolute maximum, that's 12 frames, and I want to know how it performs. So I think I'll go for ½ second, 1 second and 2 seconds with no filters in place. Well, I think this turned out quite nicely in the end. The colours are beautiful, although I did have to push the magenta up slightly because it was a little bit yellow, yellow-green. The detail levels are very nice. Now, it did need a bit of a sharpen because, you know, it's not perfect shooting with these small apertures on these big old cameras.
But of interest, if you have a quick look here, are the 3 original scans I made, the -1, the metered and the +1. Now it's immediately obvious to all that I got my metering wrong here. I needed to use the +1 image. It's slightly hot, but the -1 is well out. I was probably the best part of a stop out on the metering here, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, I think that was a good start. Who knows? But I'm certainly interested when I send off these shots, this roll of film, to see what will come back. And there's excitement in itself. The old days of waiting for your film to come back, because I don't actually develop E6 at the moment. I'll do my C41 colour, but not slide. Just didn't have the volume. Chemicals were expensive. I think they stopped making them at the moment anyway, so it will go in the post. But ooh, look at that interesting and very smelly pond. Now, I'm sure some of you will have realised already that my choice of a slide film has meant that I'm going to struggle to shoot certain scenes like this one. I mean, there's no way, sorry, I've got my phone in my hand, there's no way I'm going to be able to do anything with this sky. Can't put a graduate on, it's just going to blow out. So I need to think more carefully about compositions and keep it all within a fairly tight exposure range. Well, one of the nice things about working slightly outside your comfort zone, and for me that's colour film, is that some of the scenes I'm used to shooting in black and white, which just wouldn't work this morning, work because of the colour. You know, who'd have thought it? The colour is the shot. These ferns are the shot. And I don't need to worry so much about the composition and the arrangement because the colour is the dominant factor. So it's making my brain work. So what we have here is ferns in green, just taking in this area here with some of the other ferns in the background and an old log running through. Given that it's slide film, I will need to do some post-processing to lift the shadows, I think. Got the wide angle lens on set to f16. 2 shots with a wide angle today. That's something I never do either in the forest. So just need to take a little bit of a meter reading. Should we go for an incident reading again, just for fun? Okay. Okay, incident reading means the light falling on the subject is what's measured as opposed to the reflected light with the spot meter. Helps if you switch it on. Probably 2 seconds at f16, methinks. So probably 1, 2 and 4 seconds. It will give me, definitely, get me one of the shots. Good.
Well, let's start by looking at the 3 native scans as previously. Now this time I've absolutely nailed it. The -1 is just too dark but lovely highlights. The metered image, I think it's got it spot on, to be honest, and it was very easy to process. And the +1, a little bit hot in blowing out there in the highlights. Now, as per the previous one, I boosted up the magenta and I pushed slightly towards the blue. It just gave it a nicer colour range, to be honest, a bit less garish. And again, plenty of detail in there. And I don't actually mind the arrangement of the ferns here, top left and bottom right. They do sort of complement each other with that dark patch running through the centre of the image.
You know, I can't see a bloody thing. You know, I think I'm going to challenge myself even further. I am just going to work in this very small area here. I don't see why I can't get something else with another couple of shots. Even if not earth-shattering, like I said before, I'm trying out a film. I'm enjoying myself. I'm not wearing myself out either. I'll probably be home having a nice coffee in an hour's time. So I must admit, I do feel better than when I started. Well, I have not used my beloved short telephoto today, so I'm going to put the short telephoto on, take the wide angle off, and I'm going to damn well shoot something with it. So I have got my longish lens on and I'm going to frame up something with ferns in it, surprisingly, and a tree. A little bit different. Well, no, it's not a little bit different. It's exactly the same as the last one, really, just with a longer lens. Now this one I have spot metered for, just so I can make sure my spot metering technique is up to scratch. And I've gone for 2, 4 and 8 seconds.
Well, as per the last one, I have got my metering spot on again here. Although this was with the spot meter, I think I'm a little bit more comfortable with spot metering. I'm very, very happy with that exposure level. I think of all the images, this is probably the weakest one, but it does work with the others in the series. I mean, they have got that sort of homogeneous look. Applied the same colour, grading and profile there. A little bit of sharpening, so yeah, not bad overall.
Now, I have to be totally honest with you. This scene in front of me here has been absolutely drawing me to it time and time again this morning. I've been here about an hour and a half so far, and I can't help but come back to it. But every time I try and frame it with the square format, it doesn't look right, whether I use wide angle, telephoto, whatever. These trees seem to annoy me when I'm actually previewing it, but they don't annoy me when I'm looking at the scene now. So the challenge is to get a shot of this, something I've seen many times before, never photographed it. So with the last few frames, I'm going to make a huge effort to get it captured once and for all. Righto, I have made my decision and I'm being super brave here. What I'm doing is I've only actually got 2 frames left on the roll because I left the mirror up and had to wind on earlier in the shoot, just a basic schoolboy error. However, with those 2 frames, I've decided to take a focus stack shot. I'm going to go for some ferns in the foreground and the distant log. Can't bracket it, only got those 2 shots. So focused close, 4 seconds f22, and then in the distance, 4 seconds f22. Probably going to be a little bit underexposed, overexposed in the scene. I don't think I've captured the whole dynamic range in there. Don't know if I'm going to get everything in focus, even with stacking, but it's well worth the go, isn't it?
Well, very pleased with my exposure here. It was absolutely spot on. It was, yeah, right bang in the middle there. No highlight or shadow problems. Now, merging the 2 images in Photoshop, pretty good actually. The foreground ferns could have done with being a bit sharper. Should have really focused directly on them and let f22 pull the middle ground in. Background was fine though. Not a great lens at f22, this old 50mm Zenson on S. So I had to run it through 2 rounds of sharpening in Photoshop Smart Sharpen to bring it up to acceptable levels. But overall, I can't complain really. So yeah, something else learned today, using old technology, new technology, and be able to focus stack and get adequate depth of field.
So that's me done. I'm going to get these sent off in the old-fashioned post and see what comes back. Anyway, back to the point of the video about getting out and overcoming that CBA feeling. Well, yes, it did work. It wasn't a great photo shoot. I don't think I got any great images. I did use a new film though, and I got my enthusiasm back somewhat. So having broken the malaise of the past few weeks, I think it'll be a lot easier now for me to motivate myself. So yeah, in short, don't worry if you're not bothered and you don't get out. It'll come back. Maybe just do something local and try something different. God, even buy a new camera or lens. Won't do any harm, will it? So yes, thanks for coming along with me on this different trip, and I'll see you again soon.